Welcome back to the Meeple Marathon and my continued 12 days of Christmas challenge. Today we are going to be talking about my top 6 unofficial solo variants. So earlier in my challenge, I discussed my top Automa games. Now these were solo Automa that were included in the game, designed by the publisher or, coinciding with the publisher. These, however, are unofficial variants that fans of the game have produced and then shared on. Pretty sure all of them can be found on BGG. I'm going to be showing them off. I'm going to be including links in the description below. So if any of these games are ones that you own and have always been curious about playing solo, feel free to check them out. Or if these are games that you have always considered, these solo variants make it worth purchasing the game simply to play with the solo variant. They're that good. So again, it's a very short list, and I'm actually going to throw a little bonus one in here for you. I didn't really want to rank this one because I have a little personal investment in this first one on the list, so I didn't want to be causing any favorites or anything like that. So technically this is going to be the top 6 with a little bonus one. So my bonus game here is Above and Below by Ryan Laukat. This is Ryan Lauchat's first narrative-driven story game that really kind of set the standard then for Near and Far and Sleeping Gods, and we'll see how much narrative there is in Now and Never. But this was the first, and it is this worker placement game. I actually mentioned this one briefly in my engine building game because you're essentially taking workers, and you have 3 basic workers at the beginning of the game, but you're hiring more workers, and the more workers you have, the more actions you can take. Well, so that being said, with having to hire workers and placing workers and things like that, there was never a solo variant produced by Ryan Laukat. He figured it out with Now and Never with the expansion, and then obviously implemented it in Sleeping Gods right off the bat, but never did anything like this for Above and Below. But a gentleman by... where was his thing? Okay, here we go. The Ad Man, or 3Ad Man, here created a solo variant that I thought was on the right track, and I essentially requested his permission to post an updated version of his file here. And so there's some rules to it that you would have to read, but this is essentially it. You need 8-sided die and this printout sheet, and then each time it's the bot's turn, you roll the die, and depending on what round it is, you can see that he's going to be, he's not going to take the Explorer Harvest action in the first rounds. Those would be silly to do the harvest action because he probably doesn't have anything to harvest. He's going to focus on build, hire, and labor, and you can see that he has a better chance of hitting on build, hire, and then labor. But also the pips next to it means that he's only going to take that action once. So he's actually, with 3 workers, going to build, hire, and labor in the first round. It just depends on when he does it. But then you get up here in the second round, all of his options are stretched out, and you can see he could labor every single time if he wanted to, but only after the build and hire actions have been completed. So if you roll an 8, you re-roll it. But then if you continue to roll 8s after that, you continue to take the labor action, so on and so forth. So anyways, I really like this. It works. Above and Below is a charming game, but it's usually not what my gaming group wants to play. But every now and then I get on a Ryan Laukat kick, and I love to pull this out, and this works really well for me. So that was Above and Below, my little bonus game. All right. So my official number 6 on the ranking is a solo Automa for Batman Gotham City Chronicles. Batman Gotham City Chronicles is a very ambitious game. Lots of miniatures. It was, it's produced by Monolith Games. It's basically a re-implementation of the Conan system, and it's very complicated. And this was one that I would love to sit down and play multiplayer. I purchased the game just because of the hype and the miniatures, and it it's a beautiful game. There's so much going on. You can see there's these trays and everything, and these player boards, but there was no solo play. There was no rules designed for controlling like the bad guys or even the good guys if you're playing the bad guys. Now, they're supposedly in season 3 of their Kickstarter, Batman Gotham City Chronicles round 3 of Kickstarter. They are including a solo variant. So this may all be a moot point. But for now, if this is a game you own and are struggling to get to the table more often, I personally used it to really help me learn the rules, and then I attempted to play this with a group of friends, and we did okay. But I have played this more solo using this variant. This one took me directly to the link, but I'll figure out it. I will have his link in the description below. Here, let me, because I don't want to not give this guy credit for his thing, and I bookmarked it. So JK777 is the gentleman who has come up with this. You can see very intricate rule set, this whole flow chart, but the thing you need the most are these cards, and it's basically going to tell you which numbers along the river. If you're not familiar with the game, the bad guys or the people playing the bad guys usually have these river of cards in front of them, and it could be a bunch of minions, and then interspersed are the bosses. But the further along the river they are, the more expensive it is to activate them. So this one's telling you, it's going to be a lot of 1s and 2s, 1s and 3s. Every now and then you're going to get the star one, which is like the main boss. But this essentially tells you which 2 people to activate and which actions to go through, prioritizing them taking. It's got a bunch of other information on the cards. The cards are like Euro size. You print them off, you sleeve them, and it works fine. But again, he's put a lot of effort into this, and it does work. I have played it. I have actually played it on the channel. So if you're interested in seeing how this particular, actually I've played all of these that I'm about to mention except one on the channel. There's a lot of effort, there's a lot of love that went into this one, and it does work. The reason it is not the top one for me, it's my number 6, is that I feel like it could use a little work. And if you actually enter the forum for his post, you can see there's a lot of back and forth between myself and a couple other users, and we've been giving him a lot of suggestions, and I didn't want to take this one over like I did the above and below one. I just have been making my suggestions here and there. I feel like if he tweaked it a little bit more, it could really be amazing. But also he may be thinking, Monolith's about to do it themselves. What's the point? So, anyways, this is Batman Gotham City Chronicles solo variant. Up next is actually another Ryan Lockett game. I really love Ryan Lockett games, and I collect them and want to always be able to play them. So Islebound is this kind of action selection game where you're moving a ship around these various islands and then activating them, or sometimes you can befriend them, sometimes you can attack them, but wherever the island is depending on what your abilities you have to do. Here you can see the island board, very unique shaped tiles to create this island. It's a very unique board, but every person has their player board, which looks like a ship, but then you're also building out essentially your home island. Everybody has a home island up here in the corner. You're going to be building buildings, taking on crew, things like that. So it's similar to Above and Below, but again, it was not created with anything of a solo variant. So what we have here is Breath of J here came up with his own solo variant, and essentially it's a roll a d6 and roll a d6 for movement, and then you roll a d6 for his action. So almost everybody's got a d6. Again, I have played this on the channel, and it works quite well. It allows you to experience the game, play against someone. It's not a beat your own score type of thing. There's always somebody there intervening, beating you to places. It just really works. This is a perfect example of what you would expect like a solo AI to be, really. I mean, I know that a lot of solo AIs don't like to implement dice rolling and things happening as a random dice roll, but this one certainly works for that instance. So just 1d6 and print out these rules, and you can play Islebound solo. All right. Up next on my list is, sorry, these are not loading, Disney Villainous. Disney Villainous is a asymmetrical game where it's essentially a card game, but it's also another action selection game where what's so unique about this game is that every single player's character is extremely unique from the next. Your win conditions are unique from the next person, and you're also playing as the villains. You're not playing as the heroes. So, if you're Captain Hook, for example, your win condition might be to capture Peter Pan and then get him to the Jolly Roger. And, there's a lot of card play that has to go into doing that, but you have these unique boards which give you the actions that you can select. Here you can see, this is a very busy picture, so that's not helping me. Here you can see Jafar's board, and you see 1, 2, 3, 4 different locations to where you can go and take the actions. But if people are trying to thwart you, they're going to play the hero characters. They're going to play heroes against you, which you can see in this case would be Aladdin or the genie or the magic carpet, and they're going to be covering up these top actions. So not only reduces the actions you can take if you go to that spot, but also probably has to be somebody you have to get rid of in order to complete your objective, because they're going to be blocking you. So there's minimal player interaction in this game. It's really just messing with people by putting a hero card onto their board and making their life more difficult. But other than that, you pretty much kind of exist in your own little world. So what Matt Lauder has done here is essentially, when the quarantine hit, he came up with a solo variant that doesn't even really require you to run another AI. So you're not having to play two-handed. You simply need a D12 and a D20, but the D20 is really just to count down the rounds. Essentially, you give yourself a timer, which is 20 rounds, and a D10, not a D12. You need a D10, and every time after you've taken a turn, you roll the die, and you have a certain percent chance, 1 through 4, of getting faded, and that's when another player would have put a card on your hand. However, if you land on, there's certain action spaces you can see here with the lightning bolt that you would fate other people. That's how you would fate other people. He says if you're on one of those spaces and you activated them, you are reduced to a 1 and a 2, fating you, because it's like the opposite of what you would normally take that action for. Anyways, it's so fast, so easy. Basically, if you do get fated, you draw 2 cards and you have to choose the one that would be the most detrimental to you. Usually that's placing down the highest hero card, the hero card with the highest health, in the worst location imaginable. It doesn't take a lot of thought to figure out where to put it down. But what this does is allow you to experience all the characters, because there is now, for the main game, Disney Villainous, I believe at least 3, if not 4 expansions, little standalone expansions, and then now they have Marvel Villainous with an expansion, and it allows you to experience all these characters, and I can literally sit down in 20 minutes and play through a character and be like, oh, let me play this character, see what they're like. This is a fun party game if you have not necessarily a party game, but if you have a larger group, because I believe you can play up to maybe even 8 people who are willing to, sit down and learn a new set of rules, because everybody's, the way each character comes with their own little booklet. So everybody's got to sit down and read through their booklet and understand what they're doing, and then they're ready to go. But so if you have a group of people that are willing to do that, this is a really fun game. But it's also, if you're just wanting to check out what the characters are, if you have this game and have only ever played like once or twice, download this variant and just go play through all the characters and just experience them. And maybe the game's not for you and you'll sell it, but at least you've gotten to play through them all. So that is Matt Lauder, his Disney Villainous quarantine solo variant. All right, up next is Star Wars Rebellion. Now, Star Wars Rebellion, you may have heard me talk about on the channel before, is basically Star Wars in a box. It is a huge space opera style game, not quite as bad as Twilight Imperium, but it's up there. It's this epic, very zoomed out view of Star Wars, taking over planets, huge space battles, ground battles, all condensed into, the playings of cards and things like that. But it's also a very long game. And I love playing this game every year, no matter what, on May the 4th. And sometimes I can find some people to play with, or someone, because it's really just meant to be a head-to-head game. That's another thing. If you've got a group, they don't want to sit down and all watch you play this. But I love playing this game annually on May the 4th, and having a solo variant for it allows me to not only take my time, but play it whenever I want, not have to track somebody down, but just still get to experience the space opera Star Wars in a box game that is Star Wars Rebellion. So what we have here is Dale Bonacor's solo variant, and this one basically covers everything. Now, this was created before the expansion or without the expansion in mind, so there are a few tweaks which, if you go on BGG and just start perusing around, especially in the files section, or search for the keyword solo, you're going to get all of the, there's a few other tweaks. If you have the expansion, you want to include those because the battles change a little bit. But this right here is everything you need to know to play out the game where you're keeping it secret and they're randomly, it's just, there's so much going on with this game. I'm not going to sit here and attempt to even describe to you what all goes into playing the game. It's a very heavy game. It takes a long time, but this solo variant works, and I play it every year. I've played it on the channel. So if you are interested in checking it out, feel free to check out his. And again, the best reason for downloading this one is that Star Wars Rebellion can be a long game and one that is tough to talk people into playing. So now you don't need to find anybody else. All right. Up next, and this is my number 2, is Champions of Midgard. So I could have brought up the solo BGG page, but I wanted to highlight that the Mountain Gamer here has, and I believe this is the same individual who came up with the actual variant, has this great video. So just go into YouTube and search for Champions of Midgard solo variant and watch this solo and multiplayer dummy system. So I'm actually going to link this video in my video just to give him some props on YouTube. But he's got a link to all the files in his video. But here is what the files look like. It's basically, Google Drive sharing docs, but you can see here it's basically just a card system. And he's done a nice little job of adding this, like, just little bit of, era-specific iconography type of decorative border here. So the cards are somewhat fancy, but not over the top. Anyways, it's basically just a card system. This is exactly like what you would expect to see if the producer would have included a solo variant. Just a deck of cards. There's a few you can add in if you want to play easier, or a few you can add in if you want to play harder. And it's basically shuffle up the deck, flip it over, and it's, place the worker here, do this or do that at certain locations. Because Champions of Midgard, at the end of the day, is a worker placement game. So all you really need is someone blocking you, beating you to spaces, competing with you and gaining points as you're gaining points. And that's what this does. This creates a fictional person who's sending his workers out there, blocking you in places, acquiring points that you're having to keep pace with. So it's not a beat your own score type of variant. It is a physically playing against someone solo variant. And Champions of Midgard is a great little worker placement game. It's not little, great worker placement game where that charges you with collecting the necessary resources and then going out and fighting monsters in the Viking era per se. And this really just feels like it should have been included in the box. So the Mountain Gamer, at least that's what his YouTube name is. Can't quite remember if he has the same. I don't think he has the same BGG name. But anyways, I'll have links to some of this stuff in the description below. So if you have Champions of Midgard, or if you've ever been curious about playing Champions of Midgard, seriously, you could go buy Champions of Midgard and download this, print it out, and be playing Champions of Midgard. It's a really well done variant. Feels like it's should have been included in the box. So that's my number 2. My number 1 unofficial solo variant is one that you may have heard of. Was incredibly popular for its time at the time that it was in its inception. But it's for Star Wars X-Wing. So Star Wars X-Wing is a miniatures game. It's not really a board game. So I have highlighted it on my channel briefly on May the 4th, but other than that, it doesn't really fit the channel. But it's, a tactical skirmish game where you're placing miniatures down and you're putting the rulers out and you're moving them to very specific places and marking the range and things like that. But it's Star Wars, so why wouldn't I love it? And I remember getting this core set as a Christmas gift, and then really not being able to find anyone to play with and getting ready to sell it and get rid of it. And then I heard about Heroes of the Atari Cluster. Heroes of the Atari Cluster is, seriously, this guy didn't just go to the effort of creating another deck of cards or a nice printout. He created, it's not terrain because it's in space, but if you download his files, he's got these player cards, he's got additional, he has created an expansion for X-Wing. Due to obviously copyright rules, he can't charge you for it, so it's free to download. But it's got a plot line, it's got all of this stuff. He's creating cards for the game that don't exist in the game. He's creating a rule set, he is creating space terrain. There are specific, usually the game is you start on one side and your opponent starts on the other and you all fly around until everybody is shot down. He has created scenario specific events where it's not just about shooting everybody down, it's about escorting things from one corner of the map to the other, or it's about docking something at this funky space station, or he created a big box expansion for a Fantasy Flight game. There is so much production value put into this, it's ridiculous. And this was the first ever solo variant that I actually got into. This Heroes of the Atari Cluster, I guess you could say, is what got me into solo variants, because I had a game that I couldn't really get anybody else to play with, but I wanted to experience. And so I went and downloaded all this stuff. I laminated certain cards. I printed certain cards out on cardstock and sleeved them. I printed all of these terrain out on sticker paper, and then bought some chipboard off of Amazon, stickered everything to the chipboard, and then cut it out. And I have it all, packed away with the rest of my X-Wing stuff, literally like an expansion. I still have it. May get it out someday, who knows. Technically this was created for X-Wing First Edition, and now they're on X-Wing Second Edition, and technically Fantasy Flight came out with a solo rule set for Second Edition that is somewhat official, even though it's not an official box you can purchase. It's all print and play, but it's from Fantasy Flight. But honestly, this is better, and I don't think there would be any reason why you couldn't make this work with Second Edition. I've never tried it, but I have played the Second Edition Fantasy Flight solo variant, and I've played the heck out of Heroes of the Atari Cluster, and this one's better. So it's obvious they did not go find this gentleman and ask him to help create their solo variant. This is literally like a free big box expansion for Star Wars X-Wing First Edition. If you're willing to put in the little work, it can be look amazing on your table. It didn't take me much work at all to be laminating stuff and cutting stuff out on chipboard, and it is so worth it. So worth it. So if you've ever been curious about getting into a miniatures skirmish style game, or you are a Star Wars fan and have always loved the pre-painted X-Wing miniatures, go out and get you a base game copy get you the the first edition Force Awakens version of the core set that you can now get for $20. Go buy that and download this and go have you some fun. I cannot speak highly enough about Heroes of the Atari Cluster. He even gave it a name. I mean, people in the X-Wing sphere will call it Hotak. It's got its own nickname. You'll hear people talking about Hotak. It's that good. So that is my number one unofficial solo variant, Heroes of the Atari Cluster for Star Wars X-Wing. If you enjoyed this video, please consider giving it a thumbs up. And if you'd like to see more videos like this in the future, including tomorrow's video, which is going to be my top 5 Polyomino games. So be on the lookout for that. Please consider subscribing to the channel. And once again, thanks for watching. Have a great day.